Hello, my name is Jacob St. Pierre, and today I'll be presenting an argument against the manipulation of children through toys and media. The most innocent citizens of society, young children, are being rushed into an age of capitalism. However, it is important to remember that not so long ago, children were protected from the same economic system. At one point, children were the factory owner's most significant source of profit. This led to child labor being fought against heavily in the 18 and 1900s due to concerns that were raised about children's health. These protests led to many improvements in the lives of children, and they were granted more luxuries. However, the exploitation of children has risen from the grave over the past century. Children are making more income from more people than ever before. This can be attributed to the rise of television marketing and the corrupting nature of the capitalist marketplace. The television set has shown many now millionaires how to make easy profits. And unlike child labor, television marketers and toy producers do not have to rely on the efforts of children to make their profit. Instead, they can depend upon children's natural desires, which are shaped by the capitalist society in which they live. The evils of television have slowly ingrained themselves into children, leading to a widespread unawareness of this problem, which, when examined closely, is proven to be fact. The unawareness of this problem can be attributed to society's inability to recognize small changes, or, more so, society's tendency to overlook minor disturbances. The tale of the boiling frog helps to discern society's shortcomings on this front. The tale originates from a mistranslation and misinterpretation of a 19th century German physiology experiment and is regarded today as a modern fable. This is one version of the tale. An apothecary, whilst brewing his tonic, noticed that one step was giving him trouble. The tonic called for a frog to be boiled alive, yet every time the apothecary would add the frog to the boiling mixture, it would jump out immediately, recognizing the danger it was in. The apothecary tried for days to force the frog into the boiling concoction, but every time the result was the same. The frog would jump out as soon as it felt its feet touch the boiling brew. Eventually, the apothecary had a truly devilish idea. The apothecary prepared his tonic. He mixed all of his ingredients well, and when it came time to boil the mixture, the apothecary chose to wait, and instead went in search for the frog. Upon obtaining the frog, the apothecary placed it into the room temperature broth. Then the apothecary, and to the apothecary's surprise, the frog did not jump out, but instead began to swim around in its new bath. Then the apothecary began to heat the frog's bath, slowly, hotter and hotter, until he'd done it. The apothecary successfully boiled the frog alive due to the gradual rise in danger over a long period in time, dulling the frog's senses. This tale exposes the evils of the children's toy industry and explains how the dangers and manipulation that children are facing have gone unnoticed. If the pot is left to continue heating, then a day may come when children are once again regarded as little more than slaves. The age of television brought about an era of manipulation in which children are targeted by toy producers and coerced into the capitalist marketplace. Stephen Klein, a professor at Simon Fraser University, explains in his book, Out of the Garden, how the current levels of manipulation got to be so high, and delves into the minds of the manipulators as he attempts to give reason to their actions. One observable fact about children is that they enjoy pure play and socialization. The toy industry has taken advantage of this by placing children at the front of their advertisements. When children see another child playing with a toy, it makes them also want to play with that toy. This leads to children begging their parents to buy a toy so they can play with it the same way the children in the advertisement played. One of the most popular and successful peer advertisers is Ryan Kaji. Ryan is no ordinary child. Since the age of 4, he has been the star of a YouTube channel. Ryan's channel, formerly known as Ryan's Toy Review, now called Ryan's World, was started in 2015 and focused on doing its namesake. In front of a camera, Ryan would unbox, play with, and review a toy. This content was directed towards preschoolers, and it's safe to say it worked. In his first 6 months, Ryan's channel generated an estimated 3.8 billion views and around $1 million in revenue. And although Ryan was not directly sponsored by the companies he was promoting, his effect on their revenues cannot be overlooked. In his first 6 months, most of Ryan's content was focused on his favorite brand, Thomas & Friends. In 2014, Fisher-Price, a sub-branch of Mattel and owner of the Thomas & Friends IP, suffered a near $100 million profit loss when compared to the previous years. Yet, in 2015, the same year that Ryan's channel was started, Fisher-Price saw a $40 million profit increase when compared to 2014. Since then, Ryan has gained the attention of many toy companies, and now he even has his own toy brand. And although Ryan is not directly trying to get children to buy in most of his videos, the style of his channel closely resembles the commercial advertisements of the toy industry. Over the past 70 years, the television and entertainment industries have evolved rapidly. During this span, advertising towards children has been scrutinized and reviewed countless times. Studies on the most effective ways to encourage children to make purchases are continually being revisited and revised. Toy companies have spent years of time and funding making sure that their target audience feels the right way about their product. Who is their target audience? Children. Children, the most innocent and susceptible of our society, are being targeted by mega corporations daily. These companies force children's minds into a box, corrupting their imaginations as they attempt to control how children play and socialize. These practices must be stopped before they evolve and spread further into the reaches of children's entertainment. If these practices are allowed to be continued, then a day will come when everything that children consume is filled with advertisements. As noted by Klein, children's play is vastly different now than it was centuries ago, and has evolved rapidly starting in the 1800s due to changes in various fields such as family, law courts, church, school, and media. The modern concepts of play and childhood were not as closely linked as they are today in the medieval era. Children were not seen as individuals, but as assets. As noted by Klein, children were expected to participate in the household economy almost as soon as they could walk. Children did not have toys to hold, but instead were given the tools of their parents. The notion that children were the property of their parents was a view held so deeply that it was not until the 1800s when it was finally challenged. In England, children were not even exempt from the adult criminal justice system until the 20th century. Yet, the 1833 Factory Act imposed restrictions on the working lives of children, including the prohibition of children under the age of 9 from working in factories, and the limiting of hours that children over the age of 9 could work. This, as well as the teachings of philosophers such as John Locke, placed the innocence of children into the minds of parents. Before this time, toys were only seen in the hands of the wealthy, yet, as parents wanted their children to have a separate life from work, toys began to rise in popularity. Toys can be dated back to the Stone Age, yet they were a rarity among the children of the 19th century. This is because toys were expensive, taking artisans days just to make one. The price tag was justified. However, with the ever-expanding industrial society, toys quickly became a mass-produced commodity. Since toys were now being mass-produced, someone had to sell them. This is when toy manipulation began. Childhood, as Klein defines it, is a condition of powerlessness and dependence upon the adult community's directives and guidance. Yet, adults were the ones who sought to corrupt childhood and make it their own. The ideals of childhood, which had been fought for only centuries earlier, were being altered for the children of the 1960s. The ideas of play and imagination, which had been gifted to the children of the 1800s, were being altered for the children of the 1960s through toys. The toys advertised to the children of the 1960s onward did not have the same value as their predecessors. This is because the fate of the toy was no longer in the hands of the child, but in the hands of the manufacturer. Children were given guidelines on how to play with the toys that they owned, set in front of them in the disguise of commercials. Take, for example, the G.I. Joe and Rambo commercials from the time. In each, a set plot mirrors a plot from the show from which the toy stems and is accompanied by a narrator who is occasionally interrupted by singing. The plots in these commercials discourage the use of imagination by establishing that the toy is already part of a set story. Yes, children could still play with the toys creatively, but the majority of play that these toys would receive would be focused and centered around what was seen in the advertisement. These commercial narratives also led to more spending on toys, as when children felt that they had exhausted their source material, they would need something new. If the source material had stemmed from the child's brain rather than from a commercial advertising a toy, then the possibilities for play would be nearly endless and the lifespan of the toy elongated. Instead, children get bored of their toys more quickly since they did not come up with the storyline. Children can rarely buy anything for themselves. This is an accepted fact. Yet why is it that marketing seems to be directed towards children? The blunt answer is this. Marketers are not after a child's money, but after the parents. When marketing to children, advertisers are concerned with how to manipulate the child's desires. This leads us to the examples of the two popular children's candies, Baby Bottle Pop and Juicy Drop Gum. The typical Baby Bottle Pop commercial features an opening from an adult, while children can be seen in the background being silly. After this, there are several close-up shots of children consuming the product, whilst more silly things happen in the background. All this time, the adult is talking about the positive effects on children's silliness when consuming the product. Finally, the adult concludes the commercial by proclaiming as if it is fact that Baby Bottle Pop boosts silliness levels in children. A similar style is observed in Juicy Drop Gum commercials, where peers are shown enjoying the product and encouraging others to do the same. These two commercials provide just a glimpse into how marketers are attempting to manipulate children's desires to get to their parents' wallets. In the modern day, when advertising towards children, marketers are not concerned with how to get the child to buy, but rather with how to get a child to want. Since the marketer knows that they are not marketing to someone who thinks before acting on their impulse, this allows them to enter the realm of make-believe when advertising. Marketers can create fun commercials which get stuck to the brains of children. Think of these commercials as a catchy tune, getting stuck to the child's brain, refusing to leave until it was replaced by another catchy tune. This is advertising towards children. The various tunes and riffs of the market get stuck to the brains of children, and they sit inside them and fester. When a tune attaches itself to the brain of a child, it will develop into an obsession. And when a tune evolves into an obsession, the marketer will have won, as a child will constantly be in a state of wanting whatever that tune may be. The child's wants will latch on to the parent, as parents want their children to feel happy. Most parents take notice in what their children are interested in and make effort to spend money on it. This is how marketers have been manipulating children's desires to get to their parents' wallets. Are children simply pawns in the market to get others to spend money? Of course not, yet this is what they have become. The Bible tells us that children are important to God and that Christians are to have the faith of a child. Yet, adults are allowing children to be manipulated and are manipulating children. Children have become pawns in the market to get others to spend money. There is no ethicality in this. It must be stopped. As established previously, childhood is a condition of innocence, characterized by heavy dependency on adults. Yet childhood is also a stage of development during which moral and social expectations are formed. The Bible acknowledges this in the passage, Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6, which says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he shall not depart from it." Is this not also realized when the rationale behind school is considered? Schools gained popularity starting in the Victorian era, focusing on development and guiding children in the proper path. However, the focus has shifted from moral development to other areas in recent years. This belief that children require development is held so deeply that in every avenue where children are, developmental practices can also be found. Since it is then established that children require development, why is it that marketers are force-feeding narrative commercials upon children? When viewing a narrative commercial, children often associate it with a feeling of happiness, as they frequently include their favorite characters and brands within them. These children do not realize that they are the targets of marketing. Still, because they see their favorite character, they instantly associate the commercial to how they feel when viewing that character. And unbeknownst to the child, they have developed a desire for a toy, which their parents will likely fulfill. Children require development. They are not yet capable of discerning between advertisement and entertainment, and marketers have been taking advantage of this since the time of Walt Disney. Walt Disney, born in 1901, is often regarded as the father of modern children's media. This is because Disney significantly boosted television as a medium for children's entertainment. His effect was immediately visible as children in the United States increased their average screen time from 1.5 hours in 1957 to nearly 3 hours by the 1960s. Disney helped cartoons grow into the largest form of children's entertainment. However, he did not do this purely out of his love for entertaining. Disney had an idea in which, open quote, the process of imagining happened not only while children were playing, but while they were eating and dressing and even going to bed, end quote. Children were not the only ones who found excitement in Disney shows. Toy manufacturers and marketers were more than pleased to have the opportunity to make more toys based off television shows. Children are spending more time in front of a screen than ever, with children aged 8 to 18 spending an average of 7.5 hours a day in front of a screen. The problem of in-show marketing has persisted to this day, with almost every major show and even game having some sort of in-store market attached to it. To name a few, there is Paw Patrol, Bluey, Cocomelon, Fortnite, Minecraft, Roblox, and many more. Each of these brands has a significant presence among modern children, and every single one of them markets itself. If a modern child were to walk into a store, they would recognize any of these brands almost instantaneously. The children of modern America are subjected to manipulative practices daily. Responsible adults must limit an advertiser's reach to children, as children lack the awareness to remove themselves from manipulative practices. After hearing this, one may be thinking, is not a parent or caretakers the final factor in what enters the household? Therefore, everything that reaches the child should be in accordance with the parent's will. Yet to this, how often do parents pay attention? How often do parents know just what their children are watching? How often do parents realize when they are being manipulated? How far has modern parenting fallen behind its predecessors? The Bible discusses the importance of keeping a Christ-centered household in the passage Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 5 through 9, saying, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and you shall talk about them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." This passage reminds parents and adults that children's brains are like sponges, soaking up what they hear, and that their brains should be set on God's word. If the contents of this passage are still held to be true, then the necessity to intently watch what children are viewing is presented, as allowing the corruption of children is clearly against the Bible. A similar theme can be deduced from the passage Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, which talks not only of the parent's job, but of the child's job, saying, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, that it may go well with you, and that you may live long in the land. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. Instead, raise them in the instruction and discipline of the Lord." These two passages, when combined, pose the questions. Parents, what are you doing about the manipulation that your children are facing? Is Christ in your heart? Do you teach your children the gospel only at church or at home as well? When you travel, do you leave your faith behind? At the start of the day, are these things on your mind? Can your children see that you believe the gospel all the time? Parents must heed God's command to raise their children in the instruction and admonition of the Lord. Thank you.
Jacob, I'm sitting here thinking how sad it is that you and your peers, I'm dating myself here, will never understand the euphoria that came when the Sears Christmas catalog would be delivered to my house, and I would go through it with strips of paper and mark all the things that I wanted for Christmas. So marketing's been around and happening for a long time. So my question to you is, how did manufacturers manipulate you into persuading your parents to buy something for you? What was your favorite toy that you had? And then on a more serious side, do you think toys are relevant for creating, imaginative creativity in kids? What's the balance between too many toys and manipulation?
Okay, so to answer your first question, how I may have manipulated my parents. As a child, one of my favorite brands was the popular children's show Power Rangers, which has a very notable toy line. I know I, for one, persuaded my parents to spending maybe hundreds of dollars on these toys because I thought they would bring me happiness as a child. To answer your second question, though, my favorite toy from my childhood is this stuffed animal. This is Starbright. My parents know them very well. They have been a commodity of my childhood since I was just a few months old. They go back in the case. Starbright, as you can see, is not linked to any show or brand, and this allowed me and Starbright to go on many adventures together that are not influenced by the various lands of commercials. What was your final question?
I'm still stuck on Starbright. So. I love it.
Where'd that water bottle go?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr.
Over the years, I've read my children many classic, beautiful stories that I think are well respected as classics of literature, like the original Wizard of Oz books, Winnie the Pooh, and so forth. So my kids know many of the Winnie the Pooh stories. If I give my kids a Winnie the Pooh doll or toy and they act out some of those stories, that doesn't seem problematic to me the same way giving them, say, a G.I. Joe does because it's a TV show. So, where's the line between those two things? What's the difference between inflaming their imagination toward classic, beautiful literature versus shallow TV shows?
I believe the line is similar to where you've just drawn it. How you said you were reading your children out, and you're reading your children these children's books, storybooks, which are advancing their imagination in a way that modern television does not. I think that books and acting out books is a much better source of play and imagination than children acting out the things that they might see in a commercial. So I would say, if I were to draw a line, that literacy is an important thing and that children must have an important balance of that.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis.
Good job, Jacob. So as you started your talk, you were talking about how children were manipulated into making factories money through production. Mm-hmm. And now it seems like they're trying to make money off of entertainment. In one of his books, Ben Sass talks about how the joy we really have is through being producers rather than consumers, and the dangers of entertainment. And it seems like so much of what you're talking about is that before anything, we just are captured with the reality that our job is to entertain kids. And so I'm curious if you think that has any effect on what you're talking about in terms of like an entertainment mentality making us very vulnerable to being manipulated.
I do think that plays an important role as parents are trying to entertain their kids and keep this almost level of peace, I would like to use the word, and marketers play into this because they know that parents would rather a peaceful household rather than a chaotic one, which can most often be obtained through this entertaining of the child. And so, yes, they will use that desire to get the parents to make a purchase.
And the other thing that came to my mind is the last quote you had from Deuteronomy, that it seems like less and less our parents sharing the stories of the Bible with their kids. And more they're just handing them, like, put them in front of a screen that tell them the story of Disney or the story of Rambo or the story of whatever, the examples you gave. I'm curious if you've thought any about that, and what are some ways we can fight against that kind of thing?
Yes, I do agree with you. Parents are sharing probably as a whole. There is less Christian talk amongst the household these days, with more focus on cultural and secular activities. And I think an important thing, one of the questions I stated at the end, Christ should be, or all of these things should be on our mind at the start of the day. We should be focused on how we can show that we believe the gospel to those who look up to us, not just children, all the time, so that we can be good examples.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Hill.
Yeah, good job sticking to your guns on the thesis. Proud of you for that. One, it might seem, because we're talking about children, that it's not that big of an economic driver. So one, I want you to speak a little more to the magnitude of it. And then second, within capitalism, money is supposed to flow back down. So shouldn't that have some investment from those dollars back into children?
All right. To speak to your questions, I believe in 2024 or 2023, the children's toy industry generated an estimated, I want to say, $40 billion. This is a very large number, as the average American citizen makes roughly $1 million in their lifetime. Yet only, I believe, $2.8 approximately billion is even getting put back into the children's industries. This leaves this astounding 30-something billion dollars that is being put into the pockets of these capitalists. What was your other question? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that was both.
Okay.
What about things like, is all toy media bad? Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Come on, he was a Presbyterian minister who changed his sweater and taught us good things. And shoes.
Well, one, Mr. Rogers largely is not a toy brand. And secondly, Mr. Rogers has almost gone, and shows like that, these moral shows, have largely gone extinct in the modern day. With Mr. Rogers, I believe it stopped airing sometime in the early 2000s, I want to say 2001, and replacements that have tried to take its shoes, such as Daniel Tiger, are just a mockery of the name. And I say mockery because the morals that Mr. Roger aspired to teach and did teach children are not found in the replacements.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
To me, it would be completely understandable if we're talking about, hey, there are certain things we don't market to children. I mean, I'm not going to market cigarettes to children or alcohol to children. That makes total sense. It seems like that you're definitely the right track when we're talking about this is a parent issue. I mean, that's a huge deal. It seems like, though, I mean, if we're talking about marketing companies and advertisers, there should be some level of, like, we expect them to do these things, right? They're not competing against a stick, like in the yard, like, kid, go play with a stick. No, here's a toy. Oh, yeah, I'm going to play with the toy. They're competing with each other. Different toy manufacturers are competing with the other ones, so they're trying to make their product more appealing to the other. That's very different than marketing something that's not appropriate for kids or marketing against something that they're not really competing with. So you keep using the word manipulated. To me, there's a difference between manipulation and persuasion. What's the difference between those two things?
Okay, so I would say when I'm using the words manipulation in my thesis, I'm largely referring to how, I guess, a certain section of my thesis, when I say how television is an addictive thing. Children form these strange bonds with the shows they watch, this amounts of dopamine they get from watching them. And since children are at a young enough age where the commercials and the shows tend to blend together, marketers will use this to their advantage by taking elements from the shows that they are, say, making a toy out of, and advertising it as if it's just a continuation of that show. thus the children kind of instantly associates it with this thing that is just a positive feeling. So this is where I would say it is manipulation, because the children are not really, they're being forced into this role of liking a toy that they're not even realizing is happening. And then the persuasion, I guess, is that thing, as you said, more of a between brands, as brands compete for the children entertaining. The thing that, the most flashing lights, as I would say, Cocomelon might be a good example of this. The children's television giant has an insane amount of views per year. I can't even remember the number. It's somewhere in the hundreds of billions. But they do this by trapping children's attention onto their toys and onto their show. Their brains are like flashing colors, moving scenes, and Cocomelon uses this to the utmost by, there is no still shots in the show. Scenes change, I want to say, every 2 seconds, and the entire show is a very saturated color-wise. So this is an effort of persuasion to keep the children on.
You have my blessing to bring down Cocomelon.
Thank you. All right, if there are no further questions, thank you.